So here's my thought. We just roll the whole time, which then gives Kenny bloopers to fiddle with. Um, but we just make a dramatic pause so he has an easy time cutting it to death
Bruh.
before we actually start talking. Ladies, gentlemen, and those too powerful for mere mortal gender, welcome back to Charting Adventures, a podcast discussing how to level up your TTRPG questing experience. I am still Kyber, unfortunately. I wish to be a fantasy character, but I am stuck in this mere human shell.
Emotional, damn it!
Here we are, and my co-host, who is tolerating my ad-libbing, is...
Sorry, oh my gosh, that was so funny. I also would love to be a fantasy character, but here's the beauty of not being fantasy characters. You get to create them, and you can change. My changeling self approves this, but we're going to get into that in just a moment. Just a reminder, this podcast is part of Muse's Mythos, so your compass for creating unforgettable tabletop journeys.
In that case, let's dive right in. So, the topic for today, kind of leading off of where we left last time, now that we've gone over how to establish table rules, RPG consent forms, why they are or are not important depending on your table. Spoiler alert for last episode, they are. And now what's next? You got to make the characters, right? So we're going to start with you as the game master or dungeon master, depending on universe. What do you need to give these players to get them started in a way that meshes with the lore you've created?
So the little fun title here is How to Create a Character, What a DM Should Tell Their Players. So as Kyber was saying, we have a little...
Editor Kenny.
My
Sparkly thumbnail.
I make the thumbnails.
Sparkly text reading rainbow style.
Oh my gosh, poor guy. Anyway, so as I was saying, before you can start creating characters, and now I do mean that your players may be conceptualizing stuff, and they may be even coming into the campaign with stuff, but I'm talking about like before they can start creating like a hard character sheet in your world. They need to have gone over the RPG consent form. Go back to our last episode. You've gotten to know each other personally. You know that you're going to work well together. The RPG consent form helps with that. Table rules. So like what spells you tolerate, what spells you don't tolerate, how you're building combat, any alternate rules. So I know that like in D&D 5e, which is a lot of our experience, flanking, the debate over silvery barbs, etc. So those things should all be established before you're even having your players create a character sheet. Also, the other thing that I think that should be established is the campaign vibe. And when you're looking for players to play in a campaign, this should probably already be out there, at least some sort of vibe, as well as some sort of world vibe. What world are they playing in? Are they playing in the classic world? Are they playing in a homebrew world? Etc., etc. So those like 5 things: RPG consent, table rules, getting to know each other, campaign vibe, world vibe. Those 5 things should be established before any person is creating a character, because all of those questions that a player may have are going to be answered in there. So I believe that is the first step before you even start diving into the what level. So, I don't know if you had anything to add to like the before.
Oh, I have copious notes. So you've got to understand, Zari, you and I are coming at this from a writer's perspective. You've written, I've written. I tend to write stories more towards game development these days, but we have extensive experience with writing tropes, character backgrounds, things of that nature. The biggest advice I will say as a DM that you need to encourage your players to do, ask them to actually write a background.
Yep.
Have them come to you with like, it can be a paragraph, it can be an essay, it can be a short novel if you really want to get into it. Have them come to you with a draft, and you can say, hey, this is a wonderful draft. here's how we're going to bend some details to fit in with specific things. For example, if you've already created a map of this fictional world and your character, your player's character is using city names that aren't on that map, either A, add that city to the map. You're the god of the world. You can do that. Or B, if the map is like fully thought out and the city they grew up in their backstory aligns pretty closely with one that's already on the world, just change the detail with them. Talk to them. It's almost like the core of everything we're going to say on this podcast is communication.
Honestly, it should just be our theme at this point.
Do I just need
Communication.
just
we need a mug that just says communicate.
no, just communication sitting over a Kingdom Hearts key.
Oh my
Communication is key.
gosh. Oh my god.
But I'm pissed.
Okay. I'm gonna go off of that. There's a couple different ways to create characters, and this is like, first of all, it should always be a collaboration. You're going to be, so disclaimer, we are coming at this from a DM's perspective today. The next podcast episode will be coming at it from a player perspective. If you are a player, you might want to still listen to this just because you should know what your DM should be doing, or send this to your DMs. But if you are a DM, this is your day. Hi, we love you. You are appreciated. Okay. So that disclaimer aside, there's a couple different ways that I see characters being conceptualized. One is a player's coming with a concept already. They have a character that's sitting in their vault that they've been wanting to play. They've made 46 different character sheets for the one character. They have an extensive background already, and they're like, I need a campaign. And then they pick your campaign. Then there's option 2. They're like, I just want to play D&D. And so or any TTRPG game, and they come to you and they're like, I don't have a character yet. I want to know the vibes. I want to know what other people are playing. I want to fill in. I like to call them the fill-inners. And so I see, or there's like one of the options, Kyber's like, me, that's me. And then I see kind of like a mixture of like, I have a few ideas, but like I want to see where things fall and what the rules are before I pick like a character. There's no wrong answer. You're going to have multiple of those, and they're all phenomenal and well loved, and I appreciate, and I've come as all 3 of those player types when it comes to character creation. But one of my biggest points, because I'm getting a little rambly, is that when you are presenting okay, we've done those 5 things before. Now I'm going to drop the information. So here's the hard decisions that you as a DM have to make. And we're going to come at this from a D&D 5e, but you can adapt this to whatever TTRPG that you are playing right now. I think that before you drop like the character, I always put like a little character rules or character creation rules channel in my Discord channel, because we usually play out of Discord. Before I do that, I give them a recap. I go, this is the campaign title. This is a vibe description in like one sentence or less. And then I'm a fan fiction girly. I like to drop AO3 tags. So like hashtag dark, hashtag grimy, like we're going for light and poppy, or like classic adventure or heist. Like I like to give some of those in there because you may have communicated those to your players, but they're not going to remember. So having that on paper is really great. And also like think like, I don't know, I also read a lot of romance. So think like how when you pick up a book nowadays and they market it like enemies to lovers, you're like, ooh, I'll love that. Ooh, I'll hate that. Like that kind of stuff will give people an idea of what they are thinking about approaching it. So AO3 tags. That's my little tip. Do that for your campaign. And then I like to do a longer description to give energy, maybe like a lead up of like where they're starting, or like you're all going to come together in this blah blah blah, and I'll like give like a cool fun description leading up to it. So I like to put those 3 things before I even start laying out character creation rules, because it sets a standard. So I don't know if you have any add-ons there. Are you
Oh,
still
the jokes I could
flabbergasted
make.
by my AO3 tags?
The jokes I could make. All joking aside, though, that's not a bad way of doing it. Obviously, it gets the point across, and that's the goal: is make sure the information is communicated clearly. Um, Beyond that, a quick refresher at the top of your character creation is good to have. Um, Speaking specifically to the types of players that will come to you, there is a balancing act you as the DM are going to have to find. No one player at your table should end up being the true end all be all protagonist.
Oh my gosh, please.
Your role as the DM is to ensure every character sees the limelight. Your player group are all the protagonists of the story. And obviously, some people are going to get into that faster than others. So, as far as kind of order of which player gets the focus first, okay, as it comes. But don't spend 3 episodes on one character's backstory and then half of one on another, unless the other player is trying to hide their backstory and it's part of the bit. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if it's part of the bit, that's very different than if you're skipping over a player. Your job is to not play favorites. And I know that's hard because, especially when one person comes to you with 5 pages of lore already written, you don't have to do any work. It's already there for you. And then they also get to say, and by the way, I want to open up you to take over any of the NPCs from my backstory to give my character more trauma. It makes your life incredibly easy as a DM to create storylines if you're not also developing the rest of it, as far as having invented the character dynamic, the relationship. If the player's character has a bad relationship with that character's father, you don't have to invent that. They've already told you it's there. There are benefits that come with big pre-made lore. There are also downsides,
Correct.
which is more rigidity of storytelling. You can't invent details on the fly for these characters because they're already written. The advantage of a character who's coming into this world kind of blank slate is that you can give them a joke amnesia at the beginning and then they discover it together.
Or
Or a character that was like only a little bit written, they're like, yeah, I have a parent, but they're missing. Okay, you could do 1,000 things with that. That's a plot hook.
mm-hmm.
But the hard thing is, you as the DM, you must get everyone at that table to feel like, no, no, no. My character and my choices matter. And that's a hard game to juggle, and that's the game you're going to end up playing most throughout this campaign. So making sure everyone's on the same team from the word go is important. Take the
Absolutely.
extra time. And now I'm dropping my soapbox.
I love it. I love that soapbox. And honestly, thinking about all of that before you dive into character creation, like, I could tell you what things you should be telling your players. I could give you my tips on how I use a point buy system for magic items. Maybe that's for a short later. But Kyber's like, ooh, as someone who's seen it, I love it. But like, you should be listing all the things like level, what rules are accepted if you have multiple rule systems, how do you decide stats, how do you decide items, so that you don't have Mick, we've all had Mick Edgy who comes in with my legendary item from the last campaign I was in. Like, no. So how do you decide items? And all of that stuff. Like, yes, those are important and you should be listing all of those things out, but the people don't want that. People want, how do you want the backstory delivered? So there's a couple different ways. As Kyber was saying, you're going to have those players that write you books. There's one player in my usual D&D group. They're going to know I'm calling them out. They listen to this. They're going to know exactly who they are, who for every character they play, they write like 15 pages. And I love it as a DM. I incorporate it. I am flexible in my world. Usually when I start a campaign, like a full campaign, I'll either have things fully done and conceptualized and sent out to them so that they can pick things to include in their backstory. So they do some of that work. And then other things is as they're going and writing their backstory, I'll like open up questions like, okay, you're playing this race. Here are some races, like here are some countries that you could be from. Here are some like other options for countries that are a little bit more rare, but like could be from feasibly if you're traveling around. So having those conversations and not just leaving it up to the players, and also like what would people in that area think of them? So if someone's like, I want to play a character that was kind of ostracized when they were young. So like maybe finding a country or building a country or a city or an area that works with that could be an option. So it's all about collaboration there. So you'll have some players that want to collaborate, that you're talking to back and forth about their backstory after the picking of character classes, etc. And then you'll have some players who are like, I have this character. Here's some personality notes. I want this to have happened to them in the past. I have one player very specifically who I'm thinking of who's like that, who's played in multiple of my campaigns. I get like a text paragraph. That's it. Now, what we do is, first of all, I know that he doesn't mind me pulling things and messing with his backstory. And actually, funny enough, his backstory was the first to come up into play in Rise of the Ordinary. Because of where things were. But so like we have that relationship built and we talked about it. I was like, do you have opinions on this? And he was like, no, I don't have opinions on it. And the things that he did have opinions on, I asked questions about. Like, how old is your character? What areas do you want from? Do you care if I pull like these strings? And he was like, nope, do it. Do it to it. Sounds fun. So like having those conversations ahead of time and adapting your world to fit it are really fun.
Yeah, no additional notes on that one. That is the core of what you as a DM are going to be establishing. The players are going to come to you with ideas. You don't have to sit there and only say yes, but your goal is to be optimistic. So if they come to you and they're like, I want to have this style of origin, and you get to go, okay, cool. So here's a couple of places where that might make sense, that would line up with what you're trying to do. What of these sounds best to you?
Mm-hmm.
Your goal is to come back to them with a relevant feeling. So like if I was a poor orphan that grew up on the streets. Okay, well, that doesn't make sense for this city over here where this and that has happened and there's like a huge presence of this one religion that's super against homelessness. But maybe it does make sense in this other city over here where it's more like an economic city and they don't really have the cultural reason to help people like they did in city A. Your job as the DM is to know the setting.
Mm-hmm.
You created it. It is your role to know the setting.
Mm-hmm.
So if your players are like, man, I really want to do this, you get to go, okay, cool. Here are some ways we can make that happen without breaking all the lore. I will use a specific example for a campaign that didn't end up going for very long because of scheduling. Thanks, scheduling gods. One of my players wanted to play an artificer. He's a really big fan of Critical Role. Wanted a pistol, like revolver style, and all that. And I was like, okay, here's the you're level 2, and none of the pre-required technology exists in this world. So while I'm not against you developing that technology, it's going to take a series of rolls over a couple of level ups for us to get there. And we're going to have to very much agree on the mechanics of how we're going to do this. Because purely talking stat blocks, revolvers can be a problem compared to most other ranged melee weapons. Especially with how I tend to play a lot more rule of cool than I would advise literally anyone else.
Yeah.
We're
We're both
well,
the same there, but also like you, as you were saying,
mhm.
like as I'm sure you did, when it comes to something like this, something that's not in your world or it's breaking your game, like yes, you want to be a rule of cool DM, but also at the same time, you want to know when to either A, say no, or like this might not be a good fit, or B, here's my compromise. So as you were saying, like developing the stat block and the way it's going to go, and it's going to take multiple levels in order for you to have the knowledge to develop it because it doesn't exist in this world.
Mhm. Also, the whole point of his character is he was ousted from this city that was taken over by a religious group, which closed all the colleges. It was this big religious takeover, was the lore. Um, from that college, he was due to be the valedictorian. He was due to be the best and brightest student of the best and brightest college before all of this went down. So there was an excuse for me in the lore to say, no, no, no. He is smart enough to develop these things.
Mm-hmm.
He just needs time.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time we got to like level, I think I actually said he was able to put it together by level 5, if I remember right. The other rest of the party were keeping up damage wise with his pistol, so it's not like it was completely game shattering. Um, I didn't make him keep track of normal ammo outside of it's a revolver. You have to count your shots.
Mm-hmm.
But I allowed him because he was an artificer to make magical ammo, and that he had to keep count of.
That makes
And that
sense.
was kind of my fair compromise. And he was very down for that. He was down to kind of go over here's how I'm going to turn this into an ammo type, and here's what it'll do. Is this game breaking or not? And he was very open to kind of coming to me with ideas. Now, it helps that I'm an engineering nerd in real life, so there's a level of okay, I can see how that would be possible, and I could see how that would line up with how I developed the lore of the world. And it's not something he got overnight. It's not something he can just make on the fly in fractions of a second in combat. No, he has to prep
Absolutely.
it in advance.
Yes.
Um, so a lot of the DM side of things is not just saying yes, it's saying conditional yes, maybe, or no. There's a lot of other ways you have to do this. Because remember, you're not playing with just one player. You might have 3, you might have 5. I personally start to get overwhelmed at about 7 people. At that point, I cannot keep up, and combat will always lag no matter what I do. But there's a level of yeah, you want to make sure no one player sprints out ahead of everyone else while still kind of allowing them to have that. So I think I told the story in the last one as well, but there was a point in time in which I played a character that was a paladin, a sorcerer, and a warlock all in one character. Rules is written for D&D 5e 2014 edition. The people who are super into mechanics have already seen the terrifying problem with this. Would you like to explain this, or would you like me to?
No, it's fine. I mean, we don't need to get into it, but the whole point is that it's
Mechanically scary.
mechanically scary. And so, as you have told me multiple times, when you, as like a person who knows the mechanic and knows how to game the mechanics, like I, as a player, and this probably comes from being a DM, I, as a player, don't want to be the main character. I don't like to be the main character. I actually had a problem with this in another campaign where I play like the leader of the group, a very charismatic character, and I'm like, I feel like I have main character syndrome. Like, I hate that. It makes me upset. And so, like, you have to work on when you, especially when you build something mechanically interesting, give them a problem. Give them something that's going to mechanically hinder. And this comes from a player side, but you as a DM could, so maybe we should talk about this a little bit in the next one. But like you as a DM can also propose that. You can be like, do you want to be powerful? Sure. If you want to be powerful and they're like considering a bunch of things, that sounds fun. But it means that I get to mess with you. And this goes across just from backstory trauma. This also goes from mechanical trauma. I'm actually going to pull from, for people who are listening to my full campaign, Rise of the Ordning, it's also on this YouTube channel, session 15, end of session 15. I have a character who is a warlock. I'm not going to reveal their backstory, but there's a lot of stuff. They have a lot of powerful things. However, their patron has a tie on their soul. This is not spoilers. It's very evident in the end of this. I straight up almost perma-killed them at the end of the session because they did something they were not supposed to do. And the only reason they're still alive is because the diviner wizard rolled their portent as a nat 20. That is the only reason they're still alive. Because the damage that I deemed to roll was over their max. And I said, and it wasn't over like their max double. It was just like over their max. I rolled 49, they had 45 HP. And I said, you wouldn't have come up from that. You would have been done. And they failed. They would have taken all the damage. And the wizard was like, no, I'm intervening. I'm giving them my nat 20. And that's the only reason that character is still alive. And I would have done it because that's what we agreed to. And did the player know the mechanics fully? No. As a DM, I would maybe discuss the mechanics with them, but it also is my sister. And so she trusts me. And so she trusts me. And so, like, she was like, I don't care, however you want to do it. And I'm like, okay, cool. But, like, that comes down to working things out with your player characters. Like, yes, you can have this powerful thing, but I, as the DM, get to mess with you. Yes, both mechanically and also, like, writing your backstory.
Yes. So, to yes and that, the character I was just describing, that paladin, sorcerer, warlock, the trade was I made him a pacifist. So I made him never want to draw his sword again. I took predominantly buff spells and healing spells, things like haste and whatnot, to assist my allies. But I myself was never intending to draw my sword. As a DM who was playing, I basically did that for two reasons. One, I knew the person who was DMing was relatively new, so it gave them a out where they could text me under the table, hey, this was not planned. This is way earlier than I needed any of you guys to die. I need you to go. This is your opportunity to step in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is me saying, I need you to step in and save everyone because I have backed myself into a corner.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing to have if you are an experienced DM and you can practice cognitive dissonance. If you yourself cannot practice cognitive dissonance, don't give yourself that kind of power.
Nope.
It's a very self-restraint step. It's one that I would not have been able to do for most of my early sessions in D&D. Only once I started DMing and I understood how the mechanics play together and I knew how to break the game. This gets a little spoilery because for future content, because we're going to go back, we're going to retread this ground. I personally despise combat. This is going to sound very weird because I know everyone's like, oh, D&D combat. Yeah, we get to go in a fight. I hate it. I hate it so much. I don't like combat in D&D. It's not the fun part for me. The fun part for me is the dungeon delving, sure, but really the storytelling. I love talking through things. I love investigating. I love talking to townsfolks.
Lore.
I love that side of it. I love the people interaction. So when I play D&D, I build stupid characters to either fit a specific role and be the best at fitting that role, or to end combat as quickly as possible so I can get back to the thing I actually enjoy.
That's very fair.
Also, if you're watching this, you know who you are, my DM for my most recent campaign. I did not understand. You have to understand, most of my time playing D&D, I have never played a cleric until recently. Clerics are terrifying.
Clerics are so fun. I love playing the cleric. And not even just in a healer. Okay, but we need to not nerd off of that. We got a limited time. But they are, yeah.
I one-tapped a boss.
Yep.
At like level 4.
Yep.
And only 2 of the levels were in cleric.
Mm-hmm.
Guided strike go burr.
Yeah. Anyway, so something that I just want to note. We've rambled a lot about all of the different things, so I'm going to focus it back in. So, before, make sure you go through your 5 things. Then give them the character creation list. What level, how to pick items, magic items, like how to decide stats, any notes that you have for character creation. Spit that to them. And then get a story back. And then that is where you say, like, yes, no, or collaborate. Something like, let's just circle around to one of my favorite ways to say no when a player is proposing something that is bringing a gun to your fantasy world that doesn't have a gun, or proposing things that just don't quite fit into your world. I actually think I don't remember their user, but a TikTok person commented on one of my videos and they were like, I wanted to play a cleric and that was all about like cleric magic religion, and this ended up being a low magic campaign, and so I wouldn't have been able to like only not a divine magic campaign, like no divine magic, and so I would have been severely limited. And the DM and I talked about it, and then I made a choice. I went, I'm gonna save this character, I'm gonna play something else, and that's okay. But what you as the DM need to do is when you get their information, you go, okay, just reminder that these rules were stated, which they should have been sooner. Reminder, this character is going to play on a lot of that. Here's my compromise. If you're not willing to do that, then maybe let's bring a different character to the table. I want you as a player, but maybe let's bring a different character to the table. And as things go, we could do a mini campaign and do that character, or maybe hold on to it. And for my next campaign, we can do that character and I'll build a world around that. So those are some like different ways to kind of like say no without being, because like as a people pleaser, saying no, I feel like a dick. And so I'm always like the queen of how can I fold your character into my world and make it collaborative. But there's some things that you need to say no to, and I'm giving you permission to say no to. So just keep that in mind, because you ultimately are the narrator and the storyteller. And so if that wasn't where your brain was, don't change your thought to fit one player's idea when they can change their thought to fit what everybody else has agreed to previously.
You are the DM. Your job is to build the sandbox and ensure it stays filled with only sand.
No,
it's your role here.
No poop in your sandbox.
But also no metal.
Yeah.
Nothing that will cause harm. And it is mechanically difficult to balance some of these things. So it's sometimes better just to say, hey, look, this one's not going to jive with this campaign. I'm happy to revisit it for a future campaign, but that's just not this one. And sometimes people are going to be upset about that. It's the sad truth of life. But
actually, I'm butting in here. If they are upset about it, if you feel like you handled it very well, you communicated, it was said beforehand, they brought a character, you communicated like, hey, reminder, it was said beforehand, and they throw a fit, maybe that's not somebody you want at your table.
There's that too.
So,
but there's also a certain level of, even if they are very reasonably disappointed and then come back to you with a new idea, it's totally fine. Mm-hmm. People are gonna be allowed to say, well, darn. Okay. If that's the reaction, that's a normal reaction.
Yes.
Kicking and screaming and throwing a tantrum is not, but, well, darn. I guess I got to come up with a new idea. Give me a minute. That's entirely normal. Expect that reaction. Don't expect them to have 7 characters in the wings ready to play. They may not. But at the same time, don't expect them to always jump to the most extreme reaction either. There's got to be a balance in there. Have faith that you had good enough people reading skills to not get someone who's going to throw a nuclear tantrum over being told no once. We'll burn that bridge if it gets there. But in the short version, yeah, if they're going to throw a tantrum, maybe they weren't right for D&D or for your table, at least anyway. If they're not, don't take it to heart that they're disappointed. That is normal.
That is normal.
But it is your job to enforce the rules.
Correct.
Sometimes that's going to be to their benefit. Sometimes it's going to be to their detriment. Your job is to arbitrate as fairly as you can.
Which circles back to before people are creating characters, they should know the rules. This comes after consent. This comes after table rules. This comes after the world is talked about. Now, granted, you can't talk about all the things in the world, but like, you get my point, right? And so make sure those things are stated before anyone even has a chance to bring a character that could break your game to the table. So I think that unless you have any additional notes, we should wrap her up here. So just a little bit of a reminder, we were talking about how to create a character, or how to tell your players to create a character from a DM perspective. Come back next week. We'll be talking about how to create a character from a player perspective. A little less about mechanics and a little bit more about conceptualizing and being a team player, but also getting to have your moment. But thank you again so much for hanging out today. Reminder, if you want to see some of the D&D campaign content that we were talking about, I am actively posting Rise of the Ordning. You could watch it on YouTube or come hang out live on Twitch. But also, if you want to play in with us, head on over to musesmythos.com and check that out. Links to all of our socials are down below.
And if you do have any additional thoughts or questions you want us to discuss, drop a comment, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe to stay up to date.
And always remember, keep your compass true.